Let's say you have two computers and you want them to talk to each other over Ethernet. So, simple enough. You just put a wire between them. And maybe this wire is getting kind of long. Maybe it snakes through your house, or maybe it's just a gigantic building and it's longer than 100 meters. Maybe you can kind of fudge the limit a bit, but generally Ethernet only works 100 meters. So can you have something that repeats the signal maybe? Yes, and unsurprisingly, it's called a repeater. And all this is going to do is, when the signal comes in here, just repeat it right over here. And now these two segments can be 100 meters. But what if you want to add a bunch more computers? Or, small things on Ethernet. Could be anything with a port. Well, can you have maybe a multi-port repeater? And yes, that does exist. And that's called a hub. And now you can connect all these machines up through the hub. And all that's going to happen here is that when a signal, this one wants to transmit, signal's here, and it's going to repeat the signal on every port. So every machine will get that signal. And notice this is, if you look at my video on the OSI model, link in the description below, this is a layer 1 device. It has no smarts to it. It's no smarter than a cable, really. So it's a layer 1. Now, we kind of see a problem here. Let's say both of these want to transmit at the same time. Well, they can look on the wire and see if anybody else is transmitting, and if there's not, they start theirs. But if two things do that at the same time, it's still going to go wrong. Signal's going to come in here and get repeated, and get repeated out to everyone, but that's just going to destroy it, because it's going to be a combination of both signals, and they can't discombobulate the two. It's just totally destroyed. And it's bad enough with just 8 systems. You talk about big corporate deployments that might have 16, 24, 48. It's just madness. It completely destroys your throughput. Throughput being your practical bandwidth in the real world. So how can we break this up? Well, we can then put in something with a little smarts. So maybe we put these on one hub, these on another hub, and we connect those two hubs together with a bridge. And this bridge does have a little bit of smarts. It's a layer 2 device in the OSI model. It can break apart the Ethernet frame, and note the terminology there. Ethernet has frames, IP has packets. So this we're talking about layer 2 frames. And when it can keep track of all the MAC addresses that are on these systems and which port is connected where. So if this one wants to transmit to this one, well, it goes out to the hub, gets repeated, so it comes out to all of these. But when the bridge sees it, it says, hey, where is this destination MAC address? It's over here? Well, I'm not going to bother repeating it then. And so it doesn't. And these don't see it. So that's great. We've at least broken this up somewhat and make it manageable. But can we do one better? Can we have, we create a hub by having a multi-port repeater. Can we create something else with a multi-port bridge? Yes, we can. And that's what a switch is. It's just a multi-port bridge. And so again, it's keeping track of where the MAC addresses are connected on these ports. So if this one transmits to here, it just goes to that specific port. Every other machine on the network never sees it, which is fantastic. That's the optimal situation you can have in Ethernet, really. Now, what's the downside of this? Well, it's a little more expensive. It takes a little smarts to actually do this job. It has to have some memory to keep track of all the MAC addresses, and it needs a CPU that's fast enough to break apart the Ethernet frames, match it, and then send it somewhere else. That's not too bad. These days, CPU and memory is pretty cheap, so switches are cheap. Back in the day, the reason you had a bridge connecting two hubs is because that was a more cost-effective way of doing it. Now you just slap in a switch because they're just as cheap. There is a bit of latency involved. So it has to be able to take apart that Ethernet frame and send it out, and that takes a small amount of time. On my personal home network, it takes like half a millisecond. Not a big deal. Even for gaming, you're not going to notice that. No big deal. But of course, there is some penalty, and if you were hopping multiple switches, maybe it would add up. Otherwise, switches are kind of the way to go. You'll see some products marketed still as hubs. I'm guessing those are really switches, and they're just confusing the terminology. Unfortunately, all the consumer products kind of has confused all these terms, and you're probably just getting a switch. But if you see some older equipment, it might still be a hub. So anyways, that's how hubs and switches work. I hope this helps gain a better understanding. Have a good day.